What if I told you that the outcome of the Civil War wasn't decided by only strategy or firepower, but by something as simple as a hill or a river bend? How do the contours of the land dictate life and death, victory or defeat? Today we'll uncover the hidden power of geography, where the fate of thousands were sealed not just by generals, but by the lay of the land. Join us as we reveal the untold stories of maps and terrain that changed the course of American history. From the opening volley of gunfire at Fort Sumter to the last major battle of the war at Palmito Ranch, Texas in May of 1865, maps guided troop movements. They formed a blueprint for Union and Confederate struggles. Let's start with one of the earliest battles of the war, the First Battle of Bull Run in July of 1861. The battlefield map reveals how the Confederate forces lined up along the natural barrier of the Bull Run River. The area's thick forests and rugged terrain were difficult for the Union troops, inexperienced in this area, to handle. Their humiliating defeat partly came from their lack of knowledge about the landscape and how vital geography would prove in the war. Next, we have the Peninsula Campaign in 1862. General George McClellan sought to take the Confederate capital of Richmond by advancing up the Virginia Peninsula. A topographical map of this region immediately reveals why this campaign failed. Heavy swamps and curved rivers slowed the Union's advance, giving the Confederates, who knew the ground, ample time to establish a credible defense. The landscape became an impassable obstacle that McClellan could not surmount despite his overwhelming numbers. Now let's turn to the Mississippi River. One map stands out in the struggle to control that river, and that was the Siege of Vicksburg in 1863. Now, Vicksburg, perched on its high bluffs, controlled access to that river and was thus a critical stronghold for the Confederacy. As those area maps showed, General Ulysses S. Grant planned to circle the city and cut it off from its supply lines. The fall of Vicksburg made the Mississippi come into the hands of the Union, dividing the Confederacy into two halves. The map of that region holds at its heart that the river was a lifeline, not just for transportation, but literally for the survival of the Confederacy. As the war dragged on, specific battles became turning points, moments where maps and geography were vital in deciding the nation's future. Events of that nature included the Battle of Gettysburg in July of 1863. The map of Gettysburg can explain why this turned into a point that became very significant in the war. Little Round Top, a rocky hill that Union forces could hold on the second day, was crucial in terms of that turning point. From that spot, it was possible to see over the entire battlefield that Confederate forces would have a hard time dislodging that position. This map of the area demonstrates how holding the high ground was essential to the eventual victory of the Union. Next is Antietam in September of 1862, the single bloodiest day in American history. This battlefield map tells a story of how both Union and Confederate forces were funneled into deadly choke points, like the infamous Sunken Road, later named Bloody Lane. Here, the geography of this battlefield forced thousands of soldiers into brutal, close-quarter combat situations, typical of so many combat actions during the war. This map shows how the tactical uncertainty of the battle gave way to a strategic Union advantage in its position along Antietam Creek and ultimately thwarted General Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North. Now, these maps demonstrate that physical geography in this war influenced battles and determined their outcome. The landscape's rivers, hills, and valleys were active participants in the war that generals could only attempt to control. When the war ended in 1865, the map started to show another tale of repairing and rebuilding a nation torn asunder. The destruction is well reflected in the maps of the notorious General Sherman's march to the sea in late 1864. That campaign from Atlanta to Savannah struck deep into the heart of the Confederacy. The strategy of total war by Sherman is etched into the maps of time, showing a swath of destruction across the South that crippled its infrastructure. Railroads were torn apart, cities were burned, and vital supply lines were severed. The maps of Georgia from this period show a region left in ruins, its economy and morale devastated. As the country moved into a period of reconstruction, new maps started to emerge of the shifting borders and the transformation of the South. Railroads were rebuilt, cities restructured, and new territories to the west opened for expansion. These maps are a window into a post-war America in a tussle to redefine itself, portraying not only the scars of conflict, but also hopes for a new, unified nation. Not only war, but also the effort to rebuild and heal permanently changed America's geographic landscape. What then do we come away with from these maps of the Civil War? Well, first and foremost, they show us where the battles took place and give us a deeper understanding of how the lay of the land set a course for what would happen. The Civil War maps permit us, in an authentic way, to view the perspective of generals, soldiers, and civilians who fought in and survived that war. These are the things that show us how the contours of geography dictated the movements of armies, the strategies of leaders, and the fate of nations. From the hills of Gettysburg to the Mississippi River through Vicksburg, the Civil War was as much a war carved by the natural world as it was by human decision. These topographic and tactical maps are not just historical artifacts, but are also key to strategies, mistakes, and victories that are combined to form the future of the United States. These maps trace the progress of that war and its devastating aftermath, the long road to rebuilding a fractured nation. Do you think that the maps carried as much weight in influencing the outcome of the Civil War as the strategies of the battle did themselves? Well, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment in the comment section below and talk about how geography shaped history. And if you love diving deep into history's most hidden stories, be sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. We have much more to explore, from the maps that shaped ancient battles to the ones that define modern warfare. Keep wondering, keep participating, and we'll see you in the next video.